Hi, it's Trent Clark. Welcome to the Winners Find a Way show. I am your host. Excited to welcome my guest, Scott Fox. Say hello, Scott.
Hello there. Thank you, Trent. Appreciate you having me on here.
Yeah, excited to have you. I am the host, Trent Clark, CEO of Leadershipity, serial entrepreneur, international speaker, and longtime coach in professional baseball, coaching in 3 World Series, and excited to have Scott join the show. If you were a first-time listener on the show, let's talk a little bit about what the show is about. I'm on here. Have you ever faced stiff adversity, felt like the losses are mounting, and need to find a better way? If you are, I think you've come to the right place. Whether you are already an entrepreneur, an athlete, a business leader, or just looking to start your journey or continue journey to being elite, this is the perfect place. On our show, we talk to one percenters about the challenges they faced and or things that they've overcome or helped others overcome. And Scott, as a fellow coach, I really appreciate you coming on and talking about it. Tell Scott a little bit before we get going on you, where can people can find you?
Yeah, you can find me at my website, which is that's THE, championplaybook.com. There's a contact Scott page there, and I'd love to hear from you. I'm also on Instagram at coach_Scott_Fox. And of course, I'm on LinkedIn.
Nice. All right. So there you go. You can find Scott Fox, which is common name. So it's really important that, it's hard when you're in the social media world with a common name. It's not easy to always get found. So,
Yeah.
and listen, you always want to be a champion. So you can just go to the champion playbook right there and find out. Right there's the website. He's got the whole thing right there to say how to be a champion. So pretty awesome. Scott, a little bit about you. DC area guy, mental health and sports performance coach. Went to Brown University. You're an Ivy League man. And of course, tell us a little bit about, you have another business, The Sanctuary. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So Trent, the overarching theme of my life here at this stage seems to be well-being. And I spent 30 years plus in commercial real estate in the shopping center industry. And what I saw was that there was a broken industry, really, that was looking at things through a lens of solely financial vehicle. We got to make money. That's important. However, we also have to take care of people, and we have to start to make decisions that are really good for communities as well as individuals in a true sense. And I could talk for a long time about that. Happy to, because it actually is related to the sport world business that I have as well. And my partner in the Sanctuary and I are talking to institutional real estate owners, and we want to convince them that there's a better way for people, and they should start to think like that.
Love it. All right. Now, what most people don't know about you as a elite mental health and performance coach, because we're always talking about getting the best out of everybody, is meanwhile, while you're dealing with people's minor details about helping them improve that 1%, 2%, and you're constantly focused on this wellness, you are battling chronic illness.
Yeah.
And looking at you, Scott, no one thinks like, oh man, this is a healthy, fit. Look at him. He's an Adonis. This is a world beater, right? You're a good looking man. And then this is not what people suspect about your life.
It's very true. And I'm happy to share, because we need to share these kind of things to help each other. And, I'm able to look and be and do what I want to do because of the processes that I've been fortunate enough to assemble. And we'll talk more in depth about that. But yeah, I, for the last 4 years or so, have been dealing with chronic illness in the form of, multiple things here. And I'm happy to, again, talk about all of it, because I think it's helpful for everybody, because this is like the silent epidemic, and you're going to find this become more and more prevalent. Let's go through the list here. So I got some intestinal bacterial stuff, some fungal overgrowth, some Lyme disease, and heavy metals that shouldn't be in my body. And what am I missing here? I don't know. I'm happy that I'm missing it, because honestly, a lot of what this becomes is one has to learn that you are not the disease, and to even kind of avoid the labels. But I'm able to function, again, because I've got some really cool processes. A lot of I'll call it a battle, although it ultimately is a gift, of being chronically ill is it's an emotional thing, and I do believe that body, mind, and spirit, it's all woven together.
Yeah.
And so, I know in our Western medicine, we tend to just focus on the physical, and there's usually a pharmaceutical answer. We're seeing that just doesn't work for a lot of
Mhm.
chronically ill people. And then the emotional piece of it, people actually get worse as they go through the traditional Western medicine because it can just really treat you poorly. And that's not to say that there aren't great doctors out there. I have some. Uh, but in general, systemically, there are some real issues that we all need to address.
Yeah. No, I think that's really good. And what I'm hearing is that one of the things I preach is that things are holistic, right? They are holistic. They are just, we categorize things and going, hey, I'm so good at this one thing. Physically, I have 4% body fat. I am like, oh, that's awesome. Like, how's that affecting your mental, or how is your running and your speed? Like, oh, well, I don't work on that. Like, well,
Right.
wait a minute, like holistically, that's going to be a problem, right? Like if you have 4% body fat and pull your hamstrings every time you got to run over 10 miles an hour, like it's not good, right? So it's gonna definitely um uh uh, uh eliminate your ability to gain athletic prowess if you pull a hamstring every time over 10 miles an hour. So we think that we're not really training everything, but from a health perspective, it really is a holistic approach. And let's talk a little bit about, did you know as a kid, like, hey, growing up, I'm gonna be a whatever, but ultimately a mental health and sports performance coach. This is what I want to do. What was the child life like for
No,
you, that
man.
you had that moment where you like, hey, I want to do something different. I want to make a difference, whatever that was.
Well, look, I laugh because, look, I'm old enough so that, look, in the 1970s, nobody was talking. Well, that's not true. People who were kind of weird, if you will, in California probably were talking about this kind of stuff,
Yeah.
meditating and doing all sorts of stuff. And no, I didn't think about what I wanted to do. Both my parents worked for the federal government as I was growing up, and that's very typical here in the DC area. And it was really just kind of play sports, have fun, and then I got the dream to be a professional baseball player. That's what only thing I ever really thought about. And so I got to go to college and play baseball. I played at Brown University, and I played for a gentleman who was a former Major League All-Star, starting pitcher for an All-Star game. Can you imagine? This guy must have been incredible in his
Yeah.
day. And he was played for the Senators, early 60s.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, this will be great. So I go there, and I had my moments. I also had my moments where I just couldn't look like I belonged on the field. And
Yeah.
so consistency, right? Consistency is the name of the game in so many things in life, and baseball in particular. So I'd have scouts take a look at me and like, oh yeah, let's keep an eye on Fox. And then they'd see me again. It's like, huh.
Yeah.
And then I got hurt my senior year, and I just missed it all, and that was it. I was done. And
Yeah.
so I then roll the clock forward as to why I do this. Well, let's keep it in college for a moment. So where there was that moment in college where my manager called me over, and he's like, "Hey, Fox, you got $1 million swing. You got a 10-cent head." And I knew what he was saying. It was kind of a harsh way to address it, but that was old school, right? And I'm just standing there waiting for him to tell me, okay, what do I do to be more consistent? Nothing. All he had is awareness, and I'm being polite in granting
Yeah,
that
it's fair,
label.
right?
Yeah. And I remembered that, and I was frustrated. He was frustrated. No answers though. And
Yeah.
so as I became a coach, and I had been coaching before I even went to college. My dad loved to coach youth sports. I was his assistant coach in football and baseball, and kind of been there. But I wanted to become the best coach I could be when my own kids started to play youth sports. So my
Hmm.
daughter was the older of the two, still is the older of the two. She was about 9 years old, wanted to play baseball with the boys. I was like, all right, way to go. And I'll be your coach, and we're going to have some fun. And so I said, what can I do to become the best coach? And I just looked back at my own deficiencies and thought, okay, how can I help somebody else who was just like me, full of potential, but got limited by their internal constraints? And so I dug in, and this was like back 2008. And, as fate would have it, there was another recession going on in the commercial real estate world back then. The bubble was bursting. And so I had a lot of time on my hands. And all this bookcase behind me, you can see, is full of books. I love books. I love reading. And I love talking to people who can give me knowledge. As you have said, Trent, hey, watch out who you get advice from. I like finding top sources that are out there. And I've been blessed to have some great mentors and some great information. And so I started to learn, and I came across a lot of processes actually that could be helpful for athletes in terms of performance regarding the non-physical, as I call it. So we'll call it mental and emotional and spiritual too. The challenge with some of them is that this were not practical. I don't want to have any machinery necessary to help my clients. I want them to be empowered after I work with them so that they can do this themselves on the field or off the field. And there's some really cool things, but again, they weren't practical. But I did find things that were practical, and they have no downside. They're just, at worst, a benign use of time, but at best, life-changing. And that's my threshold, my filter. Again, I want stuff that's going to work, and there's no downside to it other than you tried something.
Yeah. Well, I think it's so good, and I think there was so many times going in the 70s, 80s, and it's probably still happening today, right? That coaches can't know everything. And I really honor and appreciate that. And there were so many of those sayings that, hey, you need to be more consistent. Hey, coach, how do I do that? Well, I don't know, but you need to.
That's right.
And no one's really saying, I don't know either. Back then, nobody said, I don't know.
Oh, I know.
Like,
vulnerability had not come into the
Maybe
lexicon.
You and I need to look at that together.
Yep.
One of the things that has always been a key for me, and I probably haven't communicated it very well, even on these youth sports, is coming from a professional environment. You train up. This is why we want to sign Scott Fox at 18, not 21 or 22 out of Brown, because when you're at Brown, hey, you're a full-time student. You got 8-10 hours a day into your studies, and then you get to practice for 2-3 hours, right? Or train.
Right.
Now we're like, no, you don't have time to study. You need to be with us training for 5 to 8 hours a day, like training, playing this. So you can imagine that compilation over time of an athlete who's 18. Take those 3 years, get 4 to 5 more hours a day than you do, right? I mean, a cumulative matter, like they are progressing way beyond. I remember a big college coach was saying, the SEC is like, AA baseball. And I was like, yeah, not close. Like not close, because of the time factor that you get these kids at that age. And they've got all these professional coaches that gather all their information. Like you said, Scott, where do you get information? They've got all these people that have already played, that have already taken all their experiences from all these other coaches, and they bring that into that environment. The hyper learning is crazy. And when you get to a college environment, hey, there's 3 coaches. One's a restricted earnings coach. They don't have time, one-on-one time. There's a roster of almost 30 kids. It's a very challenging time to get this hyper development like the professionals do. So it's very different in that. But one of the things that really I struggle with and for all you parents, I want you listening here in youth sports, is Scott's asking your child to be at practice 4 days a week and be consistent and be there the full hour and a half or 2 hours. And that consistent practice is what's developing consistency. Right. And then we go, oh, well, listen, he can't make it because, his sister's got a recital over here and this, that. And I get that. Like things are crazy and busy and we're overscheduled. But then go, I don't know why my kid's not consistent. Well, he doesn't show up consistently to practice, and consistently doesn't go out and do it every day. And so we're asking for consistency, yet we don't practice it at all. Like,
right.
That's not really going to happen.
Yeah,
Is that fair?
there are so many things like that happening in youth sports. And I just had this conversation with a coach in the golf world, and she's also in her late 50s or so, and just commented on how different the world is right now when it comes to parents and kids, et cetera. And even physically, we could have a whole podcast talking about the difference. Kids are in generally much worse physical shape than they were 30 years ago when I was first starting some coaching. And on that, I'm like you're a physical guy too. I also have kettlebell certification. I did some training with that as well. I think it's really important for everybody to have some aspect of mind, body, spirit going on in themselves. And coaches don't have to be an expert in every aspect of it, but I think you'd agree that you got to have something in all of those buckets. Yet with regards to this desire for consistency or desire for anything, humans are interesting. We will adapt to just about anything that happens to us. We
Yeah.
call it, eustress is the good stress. You put some stress on your body, you're going to get some hypertrophy. You're going to get some more explosiveness. Whatever it is you're training, your body will react to. And guess what? Your mind is the same. And the brain has this neuroplasticity going on. And, these are some things that we talk about a lot now. And in the coaching world, you're right. Coaches can't know everything. It's a lot harder to be a coach these days than it was a few decades ago, even maybe 1 decade ago. The stress that is placed on these youth sports kids is immense. I know that there are high school kids for sure, maybe middle school kids, I don't know, that spend more time training than I did as a D1 ball player at Brown. And I just have to shake my head. And it's like, what are you doing, parents and coaches? I mean, is this really right? Because all the experts says that's not good. These young kids need to be out there doing a variety of sports, and they need to have free time. I rarely see a bunch of kids walking around the neighborhood, free time, just, doing whatever they want to do. That used to be the norm in America. But we're all fearful now, and we're all overscheduled, and we think that we can replace that with scheduled activities. And it's just not the same thing on any level, physiologically, emotionally, anything.
Yeah, it's funny, I mean, I don't think it's funny. It's actually sad, right?
Yeah.
The fact that if 8 or 10 kids are sitting around without ball gloves and they're just on their bikes, someone's ready to call the police.
Yeah.
Like, hey, these 8 kids are out on their bikes. We need to check this.
Exactly.
Their kids out on their bikes, and it's that's sad, right?
Yeah,
That's
it is sad.
That's
so
what it's
again,
come to.
as leaders, and you're leader, we're all leaders here, and we have a responsibility, and it actually can be fun to give these kids some tools to deal with these greater expectations. And you can try to peel it back and kind of live the old life, man. You better be out in the middle of nowhere with no cell phones connections, because these kids know what's going on in the world, and creating that little bubble. I don't know. We can have a debate as to whether or not it's even good for them. But we absolutely, if we're going to have these societal expectations heaped on them, we need to give them some tools. And that's what I like to do.
Yeah. Great. Tell me about, let's take you back through the time where you felt, hey, you were down, but not out. Things were not going well. Your mental, physical is being challenged. Things are just in a bad way for you. Take us back through that. Don't want to relive it, but want to revisit it for a minute, right? And let's revisit that and talk to me a little bit about what happened and then how you got out of that.
Yeah. I think that I'm going to stick with my chronic illness story, because I was at my lowest as a person. Honestly, as an athlete, I think, take it for granted that our body is always going to be there, and that we're going to always be able to do the things we want to do. And then personally, I grew up in a household where, our valued kind of traits was intelligence. My dad has a PhD in physics. My mother's a biologist. Brother's an engineer. And, when you lose that cognitive function as well, whoa, that was hard for me. And so, again, when I went through the worst of this illness, I couldn't control my thoughts. I couldn't control my emotions. Physically, I couldn't do what I wanted to do. I just felt miserable. And I am grateful for that. and I'm grateful because it developed pieces of me, and it made me dig deep. Part of that is you learn to be more compassionate, or I did, and more empathetic, even to feel other people's pain. And, I never really knew what a panic attack even was, because I never had anything like that. I didn't have anxiety. I didn't have anything. When these little microbes get inside of your gut, there's a gut-brain connection, folks. And when that happens, and you've got the toxins in your gut, and you've got pathogens in your gut, parasites, etc., you can't think straight. You can't control your emotions. And there's a whole bunch of humility that comes along when you experience something like that. And I got to a point where I had been faking it at work for about a year and a half. And I didn't tell anybody what was going on. I would just do my best. And I was in meetings where I could see people's mouths moving, but I didn't really follow what they were saying. And I'm just kind of nodding and smiling, which tells you a lot about corporate America. You can kind of fake it.
Yeah, right.
And but eventually I reached a point where I was just unhappy. I couldn't do anything. And I went to the CEO of my company and I said, hey, I'm sorry I hid this from you, but for the past 18 months, I've been ill and I need to take time off, extended sick leave. And it was handled very well. I did that. I thought I made some progress, which I had, but it was not the real progress. And I went back to work. And then thankfully, COVID hit. And I got laid off along with a bunch of other people in commercial real estate in the industry. You know, when people stopped paying rent and et cetera, there was a big shift that would have happened. And so after that happened, I had a longer period of time, you know, at least 6 months of just doing everything daily about trying to heal myself. And what I learned out of all of that is, again, some humility. Maybe I still need some more.
Yep.
Secondly is trust the process. I know we've kind of all heard and said those words somewhat if we've coached people. You know, we're so fixated on getting results and we're looking like short term right in front of us. Oh, I didn't get the result. The process is no good. No, it's just that as a human, we were placing these artificial timelines in front of us and we wanted to get something like that. And isn't that where our society is, right? Trusting a process requires faith and knowledge for me. And so the processes for me, I still do them daily. I have a list of things that I do. It takes me over 2 hours to get out of the house in the morning. But I'll say I have to do these things in order to keep myself at a high level, or else I will be in the fetal position on the bed until this gunk gets out of me, you know? And if there was an easy solution out there, there would be nothing called chronic illness. You know, we would take a pill and that's what people want, but that is not how it works. And so, you know, that's my journey, is one of vulnerability and learning that it's okay not to be in control, having faith that there is a way out and that there is a better way. And that's really been the hallmark of my business, is there's a better way. And I'll stop there and let you jump in.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the highlight of the show, Scott. I mean, winners, I love the quote, winners, when shown data that they are losing, find a way to win. That's from Stephen Covey, his son, and Chris McChesney, and from a book called The Four Disciplines of Execution. And the reality is that we're faced with these challenges and we may not have the answer. Like there may be a term of how long we're going to have to continue to find ways. I often love the quote, you know, when I believe it was, I'm not sure who that was, who was, it was Edison who was finding the light, right? And he said, hey, you failed like 7,248 times. He's like, no. I've actually succeeded on 7,427 times. That is not the way to create electricity or light. You know, like right. So like I'm getting there, right? Like right. I'm moving in ways of what's not working. I do know that, right? And so learned a bunch of things along the way through all his notes. And you know, that's some of the funniest things that people do not recognize, I think, as you and I got, you know, some science background, is that there's so many discoveries in science accidentally, right? Like we're like, what was I looking for? But when we did the research, like, oh my gosh, look at all this right here that shows up. And I think that's so important that we have our eyes on all of it, right? Yeah. It's part of that holistic approach. And it's probably what concerns me about current society today, is that logic says, review all the data, look at all the data, look what's trending, understand it all. And I feel like now we hone in on one piece of data and then build a narrative around it, regardless of what the rest of it says. It's like, whoa, that is a danger zone for me. What's your thought on that?
Well, I think that you're exactly right in that humans love patterns. Okay.
Yeah.
They can be dysfunctional patterns. We have them all over the place for over history. We have them now, but we like them. Why? Because they're known. And the brain is set up to do one thing, and that is to survive. It wants to protect us, to keep keep the species going. And it will lie, cheat, and steal in order to do that. And so it likes that pattern because it's comfortable. That neural pathway is deep and the energy just flows right down it. And boy, that's cool. Except it's not best.
Yeah.
It's not
Let's talk
best.
a little bit about the 1% of what kind of separates you. You know, your superpower. You've gone through this. You've had success in the past, success as an athlete, these things in the past. What do you think the one thing that keeps you moving and always helps you find a way?
Wow. That's a great question, and I'm going to give you I'm going to give you two answers to that. One is a bit ethereal, is my higher self. I think that we all have a divine component to us, and that it whispers to us, and it keeps us going. And there may be people who disagree with that for various reasons. There's tragedy that happens in life, and they'd say, well, where was higher self then? Well, I don't know. Higher self has a different perspective. We're looking at stuff through human eyes and human perspectives. And so I think what keeps me going is a bit of higher self saying, hey, we're here to have some fun. You're going to learn some things by going through this. Keep going.
Yeah.
And I can't say that that's an overt conversation message that I hear, but it's a feeling. And, you wonder why we do go through things. We'll leave it at that. Again, we could have some more fun talking like that. The other thing that kind of keeps me going is, I think I'm a curious person, and I like to figure out why things are, and to, especially in the last 20 years of my life as I've had kids. Kids will open up stuff for you, and it's like, what are the better ways? Is this the only way? And I think we get into this hypnotic state where we live in a blessed time where you can just wake up, walk out, you can knock on somebody's door, get a job, and earn money and eat. That was not the case for the first 20,000 years of society, or of man, I should say. And that's cool. However, it also enslaves. It puts some bondage on us, because it's almost like the zoo animal. They're well fed and taken care of. They're not really being who they are, though. The lion was meant to hunt on the safari, or the savannah, and I think that's kind of where we are as a species right now, at least in the Western society. Is we've become really good at some stuff. I don't know that we're really happy, though. And the work that I do is really gratifying for me, because I help people remove kind of layers of this hypnotic wet blanket that has been foisted on them, not by their choice. And when it gets removed, kind of that inner light just comes out, and they're able to play better. And that's what we'll talk more about that.
Yeah. I love both those things. One is because I love the divine, because I'm a faithful guy. And for one reason, when I hear people go, well, how could this thing happen to me? And like, there is no one looking out for me. There's no higher power. I'm always challenged with, hey, did you ever thank the higher power when that collision in cars happened 50 yards ahead of you, that you weren't there, that you were maybe held at the last light, and you didn't? There's so much divine going on at all the time. Like, we're rarely grateful for the divine that are happening around us. That happens all the time if we just look for it, right? Like, oh my gosh, you know how many blessings I just had today? Let me count all of them today and go, you know what?
Yeah.
There was this one thing I wasn't blessed at all, and you know what? There's no God. Like, wait, what? Like, hold on, give me a TO on that, right? So it's really tough. The other one that I love about Be Curious is that I think it's a lost art, right? I think we're losing that with kids, just, hey, Google it. Like, let me get an answer. I don't know. I'm curious. Boom. Up, Google didn't have the answer. I guess there's nowhere to be found. Well, wait a minute. Maybe you got to look a little further, right? Like, if you're really curious to this, I got to go find an answer. And that's really, when we really talk about winners finding a way, that's a big factor, right? Is how do I find a way? I got to be curious to get the answer. I got to go if I'm not curious on how I'm going to win, I don't know who to seek out to get the right answers, like you said. Then implement and execute that information that I get from somebody to help me win is so important. I don't know if you watch Ted Lasso, but Ted Lasso has a scene in his show where he's having a dart competition, and he feels like the really person's underestimating. He doesn't ask, and he quotes the great Walt Whitman, right? He goes, hey, I was a kid, I remember just coming around and said, hey, people have been underestimating me from the beginning, but I saw this Walt Whitman quote, be curious, not judgmental. And he was like, I've always been curious, and cool. I want to know. And he really goes on to really drive that point home about not being that is likely deterring this person from getting really what they want. And so it's a great moment in the show, but it's a powerful moment as a leader, as someone who's saying, hey, how do I get ahead? Like, this is a great start. Be curious about things. Don't take things just because somebody said so, or take them at their face value. You may have to dive into those numbers and why is it that someone is having that success, or why is it that this failure is upon you and it's not working out? Like, let's drive a little deeper. Be curious about all the factors, and this comes back to that holistic side.
It really does.
Let's talk about, this is about 4 years later now, right? Since this first started. Is that fair?
Yeah.
So knowing what you know now, would you have driven something in differently from the beginning? Would you have looked at it and said, hey, I need to consider some factors and start, either building the team around you or some things like that, thinking through that?
I love this question. I'm smiling so much and I'm getting goosebumps because, the turning point for me was when I realized that my doctors are not in charge of getting me healthy. I am.
Yeah.
And that's a funny statement because we have lost that in our society. People get ill. What do? They call the doctor. I got to go to the doctor. Doctor's going to heal me. And that right now, people are probably listening saying, well, yeah, of course, that's what we do. Okay. But again, that's just a modern phenomenon. And it's not even necessarily the best thing to do, but it's that pattern, right? We get into a pattern. We like patterns. It's comfortable. Our parents did the same pattern. It must be the truth. So we're going to deviate for 1 second and talk about Tibetan Buddhism.
Okay, good. Nice.
Yes. So Dalai Lama is Tibetan Buddhist, and they have a philosophy on knowledge, and that it's a hierarchy. It's not that any knowledge is bad. It's just that there's a certain level of depth and understanding associated with them. So at the lowest level, again, it's acceptable, but it's the lowest level is scripture. And I'm not talking necessarily about holy scripture. I just mean written word, or it could be spoken word. Some coach says something or writes it in a book. Okay, do we accept that? Maybe we do, maybe we don't. And it's kind of just there. The next level up is reasoning. So we've all lived in life. We've accumulated experiences and perceptions. We can now look at that information and we can reason as to whether or not that it is valid and appropriate for our lives. And then the highest level in this hierarchy is experience. When you feel something, now you know it. Now you know it. And that's what we have to realize in societies and as coaches, leaders. Be open to stuff and then try it yourself. Yeah. And maybe you rejected it down below because you've got some existing prejudices and because it doesn't fit your existing pattern.
Yeah.
And that's what slows us down in making our progress, right? Have that growth mindset is, I'm not going to be fixed on what I knew or what I performed in the past. I'm going to be like John Wooden, greatest coach of all time, according to ESPN, across any sport. And after every season, regardless of whether John's teams won the NCAA, which they did many times, set all sorts of records, he would call some other coach somewhere in the land and say, hey, I really like what your team does with blank, whatever. I like the way you guys shoot free throws. Could you teach me how you teach your kids? This is the guy who just won the NCAA championship
for the 8th year in a row, right?
right,
Like,
right,
can you
exactly.
imagine getting that call? Like, John, I don't know
Yeah.
if I can help you. You seem to be winning everything.
Right. And that is the mark of an incredible leader who
Yeah.
says, I'm not looking at my stats. I'm looking for best practices because I love my players. I care so much about them. I'm going to tell them how to put their socks on. That's the old story he used to do. You know, every detail matters. And he did it from a place of love. And again, we could have a whole podcast talking about love in our hearts for our players and society. And I don't know. I deviated. I forgot where we were going.
No, that's good. No, that's good. You know what you know differently now.
Oh,
is
yes.
certainly
Oh,
that.
yes. Yes. So I'm sorry to get back to that story. So when I realized that I was in charge and not my doctor, that was my turning point. I was like, I realized at some point I was learning more. I knew more than my doctors did because what else did I have time to do? I was just reading and looking online, and we live in the age of information. There's no excuse if you're curious about something. You know, the information's out there. It's usually on the internet, but maybe it is. You got to pick up the phone and call Trent or call somebody else in the world. There are very nice people in the world who will help you.
Yeah.
And once I got that mindset, within weeks I started to feel better. You know, and does that mean I'm cured? No, but you know, when you're at 10% and you can get to 20 or 30%, you are like, this is great.
Yeah. Big deal.
Yeah. So, and what would I do differently would be I would just have that mindset of, hey, this is my body, my journey here. I'm going to be the one who's going to assemble my team. And that team is going to be full of people who are going to support me. And I ended up doing that de facto over time. But I would do that at the beginning. What I mean is I fired some doctors. As great as their credentials were, I just didn't feel their support. They were dismissive, some of them, and they were too busy. I was like, okay, that one's not on my team. And then when I got a good team of people, that was great. And the team included a holistic approach. So I had somebody who was helping me with spirit and emotions and some practical implementation of that. And I had, at any time, probably 2 medical doctors who would float in and out. You know, I would pull somebody up, you know, from the minors for a little bit to help me with something. I don't know what the right analogy might be. And I just think that that's just so wonderful to realize as a human, we're much more powerful and we can accomplish much more than society generally tells us to do. It's great to have those resources, but ultimately it's in here, you know, we get to do stuff. And go ahead.
I love that. I mean, two things that really kind of bring me to that. Like, you know, no one ever talks about the 7th opinion. Hey, I didn't like what my doctor said. I'm going to get a second opinion. Maybe you need a 7th opinion. Like maybe
Yes.
you need to talk to 7 physicians. Like that's okay. Like that, you know, and we do that in business all the time. We don't just call one competitor or one colleague. We get a group of 10 or 12 together if we can afford it. And let's get everybody's background and opinions on this, where they came from, their shared experiences across the board. And let's see patterns of consistency. Where are patterns of trouble? Where have stumbling blocks been for everybody in the past? And, you know, I think this doctor feature and listen, I got a lot of great friends who are physicians and they're fabulous, but they're not a have all end all. I don't call a podiatrist and ask them for cancer treatment, right? Like, and so we have these specialties that people have designed. And I'm a bit of a specialist coach, right? I coach executives and teams, and I coached a long time in baseball, and I have a lot of experience around tennis. I don't probably think I'm a great choice for Brown's top 10 lacrosse team, right? Like I don't know how to hold the stick right, probably. Like I am be starting from way ground zero, and there are so many more qualified people that really know that sport in and out. I would be learning it. And I'm curious. I would learn as fast as I could, but at their level, that's a whole nother level. I think I would be a bad hire. Like so you need to talk to somebody else because I'm not your person probably, right? And I think that's really, really pretty important here as we drive in. I think the other side of the important point is that as a coach, I don't know how many times I've told players, like, I can't do it for you. Like and it's one of actually the most frustrating things ever, Scott, that I recall is sitting in the dugout of a World Series, realizing that you don't have any at bats. I never had a single at bat in a major league game. I just coached major league players, right? And I coached them to the best of my ability and the knowledge to prepare them for what's about to happen. But at the end of the day, I don't influence in personal action, which for me as an action guy wasn't great because I want to get in, like, give me an at bat, give me a chance, to make a difference in a game. But it all had to be proactive. It all had to be done prior to that point. Because at that point, they go out and take their learnings and they go do their best. And it's awesome to see and terrifying in the same breath, right?
Yeah.
Like, did you do it well? But ultimately, I cannot do that for them. And I think sometimes that we forget that your doctor's not doing it for you. They're not feeling your pain. They're not feeling your stress. They're not up 5 of the last 8 hours of when you're supposed to be sleeping because you're so uncomfortable.
Right.
They're not having the same effects emotionally, physically, spiritually that you're having along the way. And they can't possibly feel that exactly. So it's so important to take that responsibility. Question on you, did you feel like when you first started, you talk about that transition, that pivot point. Do you think when you started, you came in as a bit of a victim? Like, hey, this has happened to me and someone needs to fix it.
Yeah, that did not cross my mind at the time. I would definitely agree with the latter part, which is somebody needs to fix this. That the doctors, this is their job. This is how it works. And I came from a family. My grandfather was a pediatrician, and I respected the doctors out there. And then I quickly realized that maybe not quickly, but over the course of a lifetime, it's quick. That the medical world is limited, and like everybody, all doctors are only a function of what they have studied or the people that they have met. And so the medical schools, they're only teaching what is signed off on, approved in the curriculum. There's tons of information out there outside of medical schools that is actually being used by some leading edge doctors, but they didn't learn it in medical school. They just kept educating themselves because, again, they're curious and they like to see something. They get joy, I'm sure, out of it. That's what I do with my clients. I get joy when that cloud of gunk gets lifted off of somebody and all of a sudden they get happy and they're playing great. And I know that great doctors feel the same way.
Yeah, I want to take a brief moment just to mention for people that are out there, I love to highlight products, people, organizations. If you're a leader and you are looking to become a better leader, you're a person of faith and you're directing people, I highly recommend Leader Impact. Leader Impact is a group and association I've been involved with. They have a number of ministries across America in different cities, and they have a great view of just taking that leadership back, foundationally back to the beginning. And I really appreciate, honor that group, and love to highlight them for a second as we're talking about leadership and developing that. Scott, let's come back to a couple questions for you. If you were going to tell somebody that's, a lot of people are going through this right now, man. COVID's going crazy. People have lost their businesses. Personal relationships have suffered. Certainly our physical health has suffered. Everyone go home and, bonbons are the highest foods, right? So you're like, wait a minute, that's not good. So how if someone's going through a trial today, what do you think one belief, value, action you'd recommend very quickly to them to take on, to move forward and start getting out of this?
Yeah, one valued action. I think that humans are made in a very clever way. And the creation of a device, if you are any kind of good creator, you would put what's important right up front for the user to acknowledge and use. Hey, starting a car, that ignition thing, well, now it's a button these days. It's right there. You can kind of, even if you didn't know that, you get curious and you would touch stuff and you might press that button and the car starts. So for humans, it is breathing, and other things we can talk about. But I would tell somebody, if you're really in that bad moment where maybe you're even considering suicide, is to put your hand on your heart and breathe. And if you did nothing else in life, that would be pretty good. That's how powerful it is. But it's too simple for our society. We go for some new gizmo that costs $10 million to develop, or some new app, or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But again, the way we're created is to be sovereign and empowered entities here on Earth. And breath work, of course, now people are discovering, rediscovering. And by the way, there's no new things in life, right? All this stuff is old ancient wisdom from indigenous tribes we just repackaged. And isn't it great? We have to make it translatable for today's society. So breath work, awesome. Meditation, great. The techniques that I use, I think are amazing, which is I use a lot of EFT, or emotional freedom techniques, or tapping, as some people call it. And I do something called process healing method, which is really cool, using the subconscious to reprogram itself. And all these tools need to be spread, because I know that suffering, I don't know. I think suffering is probably part of this plan, because we learn through these sufferings.
Yes.
Then there's needless suffering. And that's where I don't want people to be. I don't want my clients to be, which is, there are solutions for you. You just haven't been told them yet. And so let's give those solutions to people. And I'm challenging coaches with regards to performance and mental health, that don't be scared of being the person who's going to help your player with mental health. Somebody else's storyline is that you have to have a PhD in psychiatry or psychology in order to do that. That is not true. That is a storyline that we've accepted. It's a limiting belief. And so the processes that I like to try to promote are implementable by any coach who just is a little curious. And you're not going to hurt anybody. You're going to hurt them more by not discussing it and by not bringing it up. And you're going to hurt their performance, because even the greats, okay, even the great Olympians and professionals, they may be able to perform, and then they break because their foundational aspects were never addressed, because we were selfish as coaches and trainers in that, well, their stats are great. Oh, did we actually look under the hood and see what their potential would be? Or are we just judging their stats based on the mean of sports performance? So
it's good. Let's ask a couple questions here. You've had a lot of success and won a lot. What's the biggest or best battle that you've ever conquered?
Ooh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's ongoing, and so maybe it was, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. I started to work with somebody who is a coach, therapist, energy worker. I don't know, all of those things. And I said I wanted to know true self. I want to know myself and live a life accordingly from that spot. And she said to me, she looks and she said, "Are you sure?"
Are you sure?
Yeah. And I said, yeah, like that. I was like, well, yeah, yeah. And she's,
yeah, I would have second guessed that. I've been like, maybe I don't. I don't know.
Well, there is that, right? And she was full of wisdom, and she understanding. And, when we start to do that as people, we realize, I'm coming out of a period of my life where I've created a bunch of things for decades that did not reflect my true self. That's hard to acknowledge and to then do something about and unwind and create from that spot. And so that's still going on. And have I totally accomplished it? No, I don't think that I have. I think that it's been an amazing journey. And I'm grateful for all of the tumult of the last 4 years, and including COVID. And I know I have to be sensitive to other people because they've lost loved ones during this period. For me personally, I'm grateful because it really reset, if we say reset society, reset myself. And the challenge for all of us, I think, will be to continue that momentum. And again, I really appreciate that question. You can tell me I'm still pondering it.
That's good. Well, let's talk about one thing that as a coach. When most people look in the mirror, they're missing something about themselves that likely you see in them as a coach. What would the one thing that you see often that people miss? They're just missing. It's right in front of them. Like you said, it's right there, but they don't see it.
Yeah, well, there's I might have to go to more than one thing. One is the realization of this sovereignty, this power that we have. You know, it's you see what humans do, and we call them the 1% or whatever. But I really do believe that most humans are capable of this incredible greatness, and you just see it all the time. And maybe it's not as amazing as it used to be. I don't know, but I love these human interest stories where you see somebody who came from nothing and they created something that's amazing and world class, and I love that kind of thing. So I think that the realization that we all can create amazing things and that there are some formulas for doing it. And then the second thing would be what I see in people is, and it's kind of, I guess it's sort of related, is that they don't love themselves. And I know that's all kind of mushy talk, but I think that the violence that we see in the world and the erratic behavior is because we really don't love our individual selves, you
Mm.
know. And if you are completely enlightened, and I'm not, but I imagine if you're completely enlightened, that there's really not much that annoys you, you know, because you recognize that that person who just did something that to cross you and maybe would have triggered something inside of you, they're just some other soul. They're just some other person out there, and they're broken or they're young or whatever it may be, and you're not going to snap back at them and get revenge. You know, you're going to look at them through the eyes of you know, more of a higher perspective, we'll say.
Yeah, I love that. That is I would agree with that statement. You know, I don't think people see the actual both of those things, the individual power, the greatness that's been created with them. And you know, when I really think about that, you know, it made me pause of like who are two names I think of like a great contribution as an individual above and beyond. And like Mother Teresa and Gandhi came to mind immediately, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people who influenced the world, and it wasn't about material, right? They didn't create Amazon. I don't know if Jeff Bezos, no knock on Jeff, is going down as like the greatest human ever. Like, hey, he created an awesome business without a doubt, right? But like, I don't know if humanity is going to ever look at Gates and the world's wealthiest as necessarily the contributors of this world, right? And so that's a very interesting deal. I think, like when you talk about the violence, which just seems so prevalent today, maybe it's our media, it's always been there. Maybe we just know more. I don't know, but it just feels like, yeah, I mean, we have not armed people with tools about their self-worth, their value. There are communities and education that have been dropped into this cultures where it just feels like life has no value. And that's just I can't fathom that in my mind. You know, having any kind of a near death experience where like you have a close call and like every hair on your body is like, you know, arisen and you're like just amped up beyond any capacity. Um, I can't fathom someone who just says, well, you know, it's just here today, gone tomorrow, and it's going to be short. So just, you know, the YOLO, you know, I hate that YOLO, right? I hate it. So,
I'm not sure what that
um,
is. What is YOLO?
YOLO is you only live once,
Oh, okay.
right? And so for me, it's, you know, you live every day. Like, are you living it every day?
Yeah.
Because you live every day, like maximize the living, you know, not, hey, this is my one chance or my only moment. And there's gonna be lots of moments, you know, and for us in, you know, our age, Scott, who have seen some things, you know, there's kids, there's births, there's marriages, there's relationships, there's all these things that are gonna be just the great triumphs, and we don't want to miss them. But
Yeah.
first
Yeah.
of all, Scott, listen, thanks so much for coming on. This is
Cool.
awesome. Let's finish with best way to win.
Yeah. Yeah.
Best way to win. Is there something you want to share that we haven't talked to the listeners about today? And one of the things that came to my mind real quick was um, a lot of people think winning is because they see the end result. Um, and we talked a little bit offline about reactive versus proactive, right? And but is there any thought that you had on the best way to win today?
Yeah. Yeah. So, right. So, win is a subjective term, right? Unless it's predefined in some kind of objective game. But to me, winning say winning in life is to acknowledge again what your calling is. I say heart. What is your heart saying? Not your head, because your head's going to reflect society. What is your heart's calling? What is that imprinted divine message that's on your heart? And then do you live in accordance with that? And it could be a baseball coach. It could be, be a nurse, whatever it may be. And if you do that, man, you'll be happy. And I want to give that example here for me. I did benefit financially and otherwise from being in commercial real estate, and I still enjoy it. My heart's calling is my coaching work that I do, and I've even brought it into the real estate world. I've worked with executives, and that's a joy to blend all of that, and that's in my heart. So that's a win. That's a win. And then beyond that is I just want to give another push here for the cool processes that I discovered that I bring into sport performance. And it really is this blend of mental health and sport performance happening at the same time. And for any coach, player, executive, etc., I don't do sports psychology. What I do is subconscious reprogramming. And I do it through the body and the mind. We're athletes, and from a holistic perspective, you can access spirit through the body. It's all connected. And so for us to say, hey, the solution for mental health or the solution for sport performance is only through, the mind, that's not correct. At least it's not full. And I want to have something that's full. You and I talked offline about some amazing institutions that are out there who really use some great techniques to get humans to do amazing things. The military is one of them. They have elite forces. Even sports, there's sports psychology. It's cool. It's great. I maintain, and I apologize if I'm offending people here, that it's necessary but not sufficient. And I have friends who are in the military at high levels, and these are 20, 25-year career guys. And they're like, yeah, we have to have suicide watches for our young soldiers there.
Yeah.
So, we're obviously not doing something fully enough to help people. And I'm very, very proud in a not ego way, but just in a way to try to help people of one testimonial in particular. If you go to my website, it's the mother of a D1 softball player who had real trauma in her life. And the mother speaks openly of it. They lost a child. So the sibling of the D1 player died unexpectedly. This girl was in her freshman year during pandemic. That was hard. And then she had a shoulder injury, took her out. She had to have surgery and was not able to play. There was a lot on this girl. And her mother saw me speak at a teaching conference for this technique of tapping that I do. And she's like, oh, you work with athletes. I want you to work with my daughter. And you'll see on the testimonial, it's very compelling, but I won't leave you on the cliff, I'll tell you. The mother, who is a licensed clinical social worker and counselor in a school, so she knows her way around the mind, said that her daughter called her after working with me one session, and she said, I will never go back to traditional therapy. That was the most powerful session I've ever been through. And her mother said she's much lighter. She's now, feeling good. And I worked with her a couple more times. But that's just the power that exists there. And we as coaches can do this. I'm just telling you, I'm just a ball coach. I'm a ball coach.
I love it. Thank you, Scott. All right. For everyone, thank you for joining us. Winners Find a Way show. Look for us, the Pyramid of Leadershipity. You want to find out a little bit about your leadership, you can email me directly at Trent@Leadershipity. You can find me on all the social media channels at Trent M. Clark or at Leadershipity. Scott, tell them where they can find you again.
Yeah, my website is championplaybook.com. Also on Instagram at coach_Scott_Fox.
Awesome. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please continue listening. Share the episode. Rate our Winners Find a Way 5 stars. Yeah. We work hard to find value delivering stories of the 1%ers and bring that for you every episode. We'll see you next time on the Winners Find a Way show.
Thanks,
Trent. Scott Fox.
Appreciate you.